You're listening to Freestyle Flashback with handsome Rich Ransom.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Freestyle Flashback. Handsome Rich Ransom here with the legendary DJ 99 from beautiful Modesto, California. Thanks for joining today, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here.
Hey, so you and I go back a little bit, but what wanted to kind of cover some things, right? I mean, you've made a name for yourself, not just in the Central Valley, but I mean, you're on radio stations all over the country. But the name 99 or 99, as you've corrected me before, where where does that come from exactly?
I come from more of a hip hop culture background where there's graffiti artists, dancers, DJs, and rappers, MCs. So there were graffiti artists with numbers and the name. So it'd be like Phase 2, Futura 2000.
Okay.
So I wanted a name similar to like a graffiti style name.
Yeah.
So because I did more than just DJ. So I wanted my name to not be a DJ name. So I just kind of like, I had the name Impact 99. I wanted a name and a number.
Sure.
So a high number would be like the number 99. So I graffitied the name 9 with a D.
Yep.
And 99. And then I graffitied the name with a T. So the T looked better on paper. So I stuck with Impact 99 was my name. And then I just dropped the impact part and kept the 99. So yeah.
So you also had a spray can when you were a kid.
But I tried to, but it was a little expensive. Some friends had spray. I mostly just marked in my books, like tablets, paper tablets,
Yeah. So you've been spinning for decades. I mean, you've been in clubs. You've been on radio stations all over the country. You actually did a party for me about a month ago in San Jose, California. That was absolutely spectacular. Can you give the people kind of if we were in an airplane looking down on your career, how would you describe your career?
Oh man, I took breaks here and there. By breaks I mean like not stopping what I'm doing, but like not active as I once was. As far as like business, as far as trying to DJ.
Yep.
I turned down some things just because, certain times of your life, you go through stuff and there's your personal life. And then, some people can't draw the line, they want to just keep going with whatever they're doing. But like me, I was able to just sit back a little bit, take breaks. So, there was times when I was heavily DJing and times where I wasn't.
Yeah.
So, I guess I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
yeah, no, I mean, it just kind of it does, and again, I mean, this is a freestyle based podcast, and I want to touch clearly on the music part of it, but I mean, the DJ aspect of it, and being influential, because so much of what got played on the radio started in the clubs, started with guys like you that were part of record pools that took the records, you took them home, you went through a stack of stuff, 90% of it was probably trash, and then you found that one song and then you started playing it. And I mean, I remember I was working at B95 in Fresno, and I had a friend that was living in San Diego called me up and said, "Hey, have you heard Part of Your Body?" And I go, "No, what's that?" She goes, "It's by some guy named Stevie B. It's badass." And, she goes, "I was in a club and I heard it and it just blew up." And so, that's often, how it happened. And I know you were a part of a record pool in San Francisco, right?
Right. We just got the word of Bobby G from Soul Disco passing away
Oh,
last week. I
oh,
just
wow.
saw it a couple days ago, but it was last Friday. So um,
Wow.
anyway, yeah. So we were the group that I was in, the DJ group that I was
Yeah.
in, was part of the record pool. They
Hmm.
finally got in, and Bobby G didn't let people from outside the Bay Area in his record pool,
Right.
but the guy's central unit was the DJ crew.
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
was the Amaya family and some other DJs, along with myself, got in the pool because we were always going there every week to buy records. And so
Hmm.
Bobby let us from the Central Valley, the 209 Modesto, in the
Hmm.
pool finally. After proving ourselves, basically
Yeah.
we could make it once a week. So record pools would have record labels would drop off their promo singles on vinyl to the record pools, and
Hmm.
each member got a stack of records, like you were saying. And
Right.
I'd say it was like 80% trash, not 90% trash. Uh, but there would be, like 25 records that week, and
Yeah.
maybe like, a few of them were good, and
Yep.
you
Yep.
could tell right away, like people are gonna like this,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And some of them took a while to get popular,
Yeah.
and we were like, "Where's that record that we I know we have it, we just dismissed it at first, but it became popular later because of
Sure.
video or just word of mouth, tapes being circulated in the city." You
Hmm.
know, a friend of mine gave me a vinyl she had, and it was called Summer Girls,
Ah.
and and she just bought the record, on her
Yeah.
own because she liked it. She heard it somewhere. I can't remember where she said she would. I have to ask her, but
Hmm.
she said, "There's this cool song. It's called Summer Girls. I have the record. You're and I was DJing, and she wanted me to have it because we didn't have it in the pool.
Right. Right.
We didn't get it at Bobby G's at Soul Disco. We didn't have it yet. So she asked me about it. Said we don't have it. She gave it to me, and it was a nice track. Little
Hmm.
did we know that that song would blow up.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
then we of course we got serviced the record later on. But she, a friend, just off liking the song, gave it to me. So that's just a little story about freestyle music. And it was really not called freestyle at first. It was just dance music,
Hmm.
and then later on people started calling it high energy over here,
Right. Right.
uh, in the valley and San Jose. So but there was another term for high energy on the East Coast, which was more of a synthy Euro sound.
Sure.
They called that high energy, but over here our high energy was different.
Right.
Became
Right. Right.
freestyle.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Summer Girls, and I at one point in time, I know I had the Dino record. It was on some vanity label, I think, out of Las Vegas that Dino self-pressed
Right.
before he got picked up by, was it Fourth and Broadway, right?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
his label. And I mean, there's so many, so many freestyle artists that started off on independent labels. I mean, Expose started on Lewis's Pantera records, and then Taylor Dane, before Arista picked her up, was on a vanity label. And I mean, there were just so many others that were on
Right.
these small independent labels. I mean, Timmy T started on Jam City Records in Fresno, and
Yeah.
before he went to, what was it? Was it Quality, or where did he?
Yeah. Quality.
Was Quality Records, right? So yeah, I mean, there's so many of those just success stories of just living the dream of, I've got an idea for a song and I want to press it, and somebody hears it, and boom, it blows up. But yeah, I mean, Dino, I I've been trying to track him down. I'd love to have him on this podcast. I think it would be great. I've got a great Dino story. I don't want to digress too much here, but this might be fun for everybody listening. The It was the Summer Jam, I think 1989, for KMEL, and the stage. I don't know if you were ever at a Summer Jam back in the day, but there were stages, and then there were like curtains. So you would have a track act that would come out, and they would sing 3 songs, 4 songs, whatever, to recorded tracks. and then the stage would close. 5 minutes later, it would reopen for a deeper stage, and then there would be another act's gear set up. So Dino was on stage, and Milli Vanilli was supposed to be on next. So, Milli Vanilli, famous for their lip syncing and not singing, rapping, whatever. Well, whatever they were doing, rehearsing, they were doing it behind the curtain, behind Dino when
Okay.
he was live, and it was bleeding through, or he thought it was bleeding through his audio. And when he was done, he was flaming pissed, and he went backstage and confronted Rob and Fab. And there was no there was no blood on the dance floor, so to speak, to make a Michael
Mhm.
Jackson pun, but there was definitely a confrontation between the Pretty Boys and Dino, if you remember, who was absolutely jacked and always liked to wear a tank top just to show off his guns, right?
Right, right.
So I mean that was just kind of a funny story. But you mentioned that freestyle wasn't always freestyle, and I guess the question is when, at least on the West Coast, when did freestyle become freestyle?
Um, I don't know who started naming that style.
Hmm.
I just remember starting to hear it
Hmm.
off and on. People coming up and requesting, like when I would DJ a party or an event,
Hmm.
they would ask for freestyle.
Yeah.
And um, at Modesto High, where I went in my
Hmm.
senior year, I was DJing in that group Central Unit at that time.
Uh-huh.
And I remember someone from San Jose who was visiting.
Hmm.
He wasn't attending there. He was just visiting some family on the campus after school.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me, and he said that freestyle is taking over San Jose.
Hmm.
So, and I had heard the term before, and I was like, okay. And he's like, "Do you know what freestyle is?" And I said, "Yeah, it's kind of like like the dance music. You know what I mean?"
Hmm.
He's all, "Well, no, this is what they do. I've seen them make freestyle."
Hmm.
He said they take a hip hop beat that would be on
Okay.
a rap song,
Hmm.
and they speed it up, and then they add keyboards and sing over the hip hop drum breaks.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was weird because I was thinking of some, rap songs that I knew. I'm like, why would you speed that beat up? You know what I mean? Like it would sound crazy. But what he actually was talking about was the East Coast rappers would rap on James Brown drum breaks. And
Right.
that's what he was talking. He was talking about those type of rap songs, but they would speed them up faster to make it a
Hmm.
dance tempo. And then so later on I caught on, like, okay, yeah, that's what they're doing.
Hmm.
Not every song is going to be sampled with a break, but some we're starting to have little break beats in them, as
Yeah.
well as original drum patterns. So this kid described it to me. You know what I mean? Like he saw, I don't know who, he didn't tell me who was making these freestyle songs, but he was in a studio or a room somewhere in
Hmm.
San Jose, and that's what they were messing with, was speeding up the slower tracks and adding keyboards.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you go back to the origin, right? I mean, back to the early 80s, 80, 83, 84, 85, when you had Lewis in Miami, and you had Pretty
Yeah.
Tony Butler, and you had the stuff going on in New York. It was very unique. I mean, it had a very I don't want to say post disco, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, after disco dwindled, people were looking for a new genre, and whether it was house or techno or electro or whatever. But that freestyle vibe, it's like when you heard it, you knew what it was, and I think it just took a little while for the producers on the West Coast to kind of embrace it, maybe. Because it seemed to be it was very regional, and it seemed like it was almost very possessive, like, this is our music. um but I remember, in my early radio days, I remember playing Shannon, When I was at Kadon and Salinas, I know that our program director Jeff Hunter would play the original expose as opposed to the re-release, just because he
Mhm.
thought it was better. I remember having coffee with Lori Miller from Expose and telling her that, and she was like, "Yeah." It was
Right.
she was just totally jazzed by that when I told her. But what was the original freestyle song? I mean, there's the debate. Was it Niobe? Was it Shannon? I think if you go by the copyright on the record, I think the title goes to Shannon. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, yeah, there is I guess a debate on
Hmm.
the Niobe or Shannon
Hmm.
tracks. It just depends on what you call freestyle, or what you want to call it, because
Yeah.
back then I didn't hear the term back then either.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they were just dance tracks.
Hmm.
They were a little different than other things. I think that the Shannon tracks were more groundbreaking in a
Hmm.
sense of you had music in it that the poppers and the breakers liked because it was an
Yeah.
electro synthy,
Hmm.
but it was hard. The hits, the snares, everything, the kicks were in line with what the breaking and the popping was. So, but then we heard a singer instead of a
Hmm.
chanting rapper or something,
Right.
so it was
Right.
kind of different. So we actually heard that as poppers and breakers on the West Coast
Hmm.
heard that first, but we didn't call it freestyle. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
later on, people started terming it that, which I think is unfair to the Niobe side
Hmm.
of things because they had a little bit of a more of a Latin, even though Chris Barbosa was Latin doing like rhythms on the
Hmm.
Shannon.
Yeah.
I think the Niobe was taking energy from what Shannon had done and taking it into another direction.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then that I think after that, more songs started doing following that trend.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think Shannon was a trend for setting up other producers to set their own trend. So like one piggybacked off the other. So I just tell people what I witnessed. I don't say which came first because it just depends on in your eyes what you
Yeah.
actually call freestyle. Because we didn't call the Shannon stuff freestyle, even though now people are doing that. It has ingredients of what people started calling freestyle, but it was kind of like before that. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it just
well,
depends on the person. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, Shannon bills herself as the queen of freestyle, and I'm sure as heck not going to argue with the lady. And when people talk about freestyle, I mean, she's always included. But the one
right,
record that I never heard on the West Coast because it was if it wasn't if it wasn't in a mix show or it wasn't prominent in a club or we didn't play it on the radio, I wouldn't have heard it. But I'm
right,
I'm brought back to C-Bank and One More Shot.
right,
And if you listen to that was, on the record label, I believe it says 1982, Next Plateau Records. That to me is every bit freestyle
right.
as any of these other records, right?
Yep.
And but if you look it up on Discogs or something like that, it's listed as electro, and I don't even know what electro means other than post disco.
Right.
So I think there's a valid argument there. Again,
True.
I'm not gonna argue with anybody on it. Everybody's got their own opinion. I just know what I hear, and I mean, C-Bank is still making a nice living, or I should maybe say finally making a nice living, doing a lot of shows, which kind of brings me to the revival of freestyle music, and I'm just so happy to see these artists out touring because a lot of them just got hosed when they were younger and putting out the music, and now
Right.
they're filling up arenas, they're filling up uh just larger venues. And granted, there's no one headliner that's bringing all the people in. I mean, it's usually a group of a group of singers, but the fact that the music is alive and the singers are out and they're not having to, work at a car wash or, cut hair or work at a bank or whatever, and they're able to support themselves again. I'm just so happy for a lot of these singers.
Right.
So
There's a good energy out there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I see, that there are disputes here and there between artists and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
overall, the public, it brings a good energy for the listeners of that era.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same. I mean, as you get older, you reflect on the music that you grew up with, and when you grow up with the music, you never really know the whole story of what happened behind the scenes. But
Right.
so often it was your manager wrote the song and produced the song, and maybe even like owned a record label, a vanity label, and then he pawned it off to a bigger label, and so he was getting money out of four or five buckets, and you might have been getting money out of one if you were lucky. And I mean, that's just the record business, right? I mean, it's the movie business, it's a record business. But
Right.
like I said, I'm just glad that a lot of these people stuck with it, and they're actually able to go out and capitalize on the music that they recorded in some cases 40 years ago, and they're keeping it alive. But so you're on the radio now, and you had taken kind of like a hiatus. I know that you used to work for my friend Renee Roberts uh, back in the day, and maybe you can kind of take us through what you're doing now on radio and what you used to do with regards to mix shows.
Right now, I'm on a primarily Latin format
Hmm.
music station that plays English songs too.
Hmm.
So they'll play, hit music from English artists or American
Hmm.
artists, and but they're playing Spanish. But the hosts, the MC, the on-air personalities are speaking both English and Spanish.
Okay.
So it's not a strictly Spanish audience they're trying to get. They're trying to get uh, those that speak both languages,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
different generation.
Yeah.
So um, I have the green light to play English songs, So I'm playing the new music, I'm playing throwbacks, I'm playing 50 Cent, I'm playing Nelly,
Hmm.
uh, Ashanti,
Right.
E40,
Uh-huh.
but then I'm also mixing it with reggaeton and some classic cumbias.
Hmm.
And then I'm also playing like Angelina songs, Jocelyn Enriquez songs from the
Hmm.
90s,
Yep.
uh, as well as like Ghost Town DJs, My Boo, Two Live Crew, little
Uh-huh.
pieces of Hoochie Mama will be in there, DJ Laz,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like those throwbacks are going in my mix with the newer Spanish music remixes. So like there'll be a
Yeah.
reggaeton remix that's
Yep.
up tempo, and I'll play that remix and I'll mix it with like the DJ Laz classics or
Hmm.
the Miami bass
Yeah.
classics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm able to do that, and it's fun.
I,
And
I did not expect to have DJ Laz included in this conversation. That is actually pretty darn cool.
I actually got to
Um,
shake his hand and meet him.
sweet, sweet.
And
Yeah, I had a test pressing of one of his albums that I got rid of a while back, and actually his manager reached out and was kind of upset that he wasn't able to get onto it. But yeah, that's pretty darn cool. So who were your early influences? I mean, who got you started in this?
as far as a radio influence, mixed show,
Let's go back to like the early days of you spinning records. What was the first record you ever bought?
oh man,
Do you remember? The first album,
it's
the
a
first
it's
45, the first 12
first
inch?
45s. It would probably be a tie. I bought them both at the same time. Um, it's the Silvers High School Dance
Nice.
and um, Sean Cassidy, the Do Run Run,
The Do Run Run.
and
Nice.
Rick D's Disco Duck. I bought those all at the same time.
Oh, that's awesome. What was your first album?
Um, that I bought with my own money, I'd probably say the Star Wars soundtrack.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I still remember my first album. It was Funkadelic versus the Placebo Syndrome by Parliament. So, and I think the first 12-inch I bought was Rapper's Delight, just because I had to have it. But
Right.
as far as like you wanting to actually like pursue, you know, spinning records as a job, as a career, as a lifestyle, who were your big influences early on?
Um, Probably I'd say my mom first.
Hmm.
She was always playing records in the house.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Um, and she would always have to change the songs when they were over
Hmm.
on a record player.
Hmm.
She pulled me aside and said, I'm going to show you how to change the songs because I don't want to leave the kitchen or my room or wherever I'm at anymore to change the songs.
Free labor.
So I was 4 years old. So I was like, yeah, show me. So
Hmm.
she showed me how to carefully take the needle off, the tone arm off,
Hmm.
hold the record, flip it over, or grab a new one. She told me how to handle that
Yeah.
and showed me where the grooves were
Hmm.
in between the songs on an album.
Yeah.
So she said that's the space in between the songs. If you want to change it to another song, just read the label and put it accordingly to what you want to play.
Right.
So I was like, oh, well, let's do this, you know. So basically, I was DJing for my mom, so she wouldn't have to
Hmm.
leave what she was doing in the house to
Right.
go change the music. So
Hmm.
that I knew because we listened to the radio a lot at home too, and in the car. That's what DJs did. That's what the radio people they changed songs. You know what I mean?
Sure. Right. Right.
And so I was basically doing that at 4 years old. And then fast forward to I'm like in fifth grade or something, and I hear a medley on the radio. It's a Stars on 45, which they had like the Beatles songs.
Right. Hmm.
It was like a mix,
Hmm.
and it was connecting with a disco beat. It was connecting all these popular songs, staying on beat.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, this is interesting. I like this. It's
Yeah.
kind of cool. What is it? You know, it's a medley,
Hmm.
you know. And so I knew what basically a mix was when I heard that. And I wondered how they did that. My curiosity was peaking there. And
Hmm.
then later on, a couple of years later, another medley by Grandmaster Flash was
Hmm.
called On the Wheels of Steel, a
Yep.
party mix with all the Rapture, Good Times, and all that. It was like a kind of like a medley on beat, you know, everything
Hmm.
was on there, but it had this little funky noise going, jibby, 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 jibby. You know, we were like, what is that? What is he doing in between the songs? It was kind of cool, but we didn't know, me and my friends didn't know. So that was another influence of mine was that hearing that mix by Grandmaster
Hmm.
Flash. So my friend Albert bought that record
Hmm.
and he played it for me over the phone. And he lied to me and said that he made that mix on tape.
Uh-huh.
And I heard that and I was like, okay, that was cool. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make my own little mix at home. So I tried to do a little medley mix on tape. I made the tape. I went over to his house and I said, hey, I made one of those party mixes too. And
Hmm.
he listened to mine, and him and his sisters were like looking at each other like, this is kind of different. It's kind of cool though.
Hmm.
And he said, hey, I'm sorry I lied to you. And he showed me the record and said, this is what I was playing. I didn't make it. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow. And he goes, no, but what you did was cool.
Uh-huh.
You need to keep doing that. And
Yeah.
so eventually I started messing with the turntables, taking my mom's record player out of her room, putting it in the living room with the other stereo,
Hmm.
and playing two records at the same time, trying to figure out how to mix them with no pitch control and
Right.
no, you know, anything. Just trying to keep them on beat.
Hmm.
Eventually, I got good at that, and my friend Albert said, "You need to become a DJ. You
Right.
need to be a DJ." He said, "I need to," you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And to hear your best friend tell you that it meant the world because uh, no one's telling me anything like that. No one knows what I'm doing, basically.
Right.
In my
Right.
mind, I wanted to be a DJ or
Mm-hmm.
do those DJ things. But also in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't know anybody that would help me. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I'm not going to be one. So,
Mm-hmm.
but hearing him tell me that I can do it encouraged me to keep that in the back of my mind, like I will do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, my early influences was like my mom showing me, hearing these medleys, Grandmaster Flash, and then my best friend encouraging me. So that's my main influence that got me knowing that I'm going to DJ,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that that's what I'm going to do. Later on, I heard mixes on KSOL
Mm-hmm.
from Modesto. On our boom boxes, we tried to get our antennas just right, and we heard these mixes.
Yeah.
And later on, we didn't know who they were because they didn't say who it was, but I discovered
Mhm.
later on it was Michael Erickson.
Yeah.
And he became my radio mix show idol.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
My main one.
Yeah.
Later on, Cameron Paul too.
Yep.
But I gravitated more towards Michael's style.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's another influence. Another local mobile DJ around here on the radio was Marcus Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He was on KFIV AM on
Okay.
Sundays playing soul music,
Right.
rap music.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dr. Sweet was on radio station KSTN 107.3. It was FM.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he would be on Sunday nights too. So Dr. Sweet was also a mobile DJ, came to my
Mm-hmm.
school. Marcus Williams came to my school. So then seeing those guys live was
Yeah.
another influence, you know what I mean? So like different parts of my life, there was different influences on DJing.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Michael Erickson and Cameron Paul. I mean, both of those had a huge influence in the Bay Area when it came to freestyle music.
Right.
I mean, Cameron would have entire versions of his subscription service mix it on freestyle, and Michael would have entire mixes, uh, on freestyle music as well. I mean, he loved freestyle, so I mean, they were both extremely influential in, I wouldn't say the early days, but I don't think there was a Cameron set at City Nights where he didn't play Debbie Deb. It just
Oh yeah.
without When I Hear Music and Lookout Weekend, it wasn't a party, you know.
Right.
And it just, I mean, I people watching, people listening this, I don't know how much they know about me, but I was, extremely fortunate, to work with both of those guys at KMEL in San Francisco. And I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I mixed, I did the club thing, a little bit when I started in radio in Santa Rosa and then in Salinas and a little bit in Fresno. And when I was in Modesto, I don't think I was there long enough to really do much of anything. And I talked to when I got to KMEL, I was talking to Michael, and he said, "Hey, do you spin? Do you do clubs?" And I said, "I think those days are behind me." And I told him the story about when I was in Fresno. I was in some club, and the waitress came over and handed me a folded napkin, and I thought it was like some girl giving me her phone number. I opened up the napkin and it said, "Bro, you couldn't mix if you had a blender." And it was like, okay, all right, maybe I'm not cut out to do this. So I told him the story, and he said, "Nah, dude, I can work with you." And I read the room,
Yep.
and okay, I'm collecting a paycheck from the same radio station that has Cameron Paul, Michael Erickson, Theo Mizuhara, Billy
Right.
Vidal, Alexander Mejia, Pashkarelli. Who the hell am I?
Prince Ice, wasn't he on there?
I think after, at a
Later on
later
after that.
time, yeah, with like Rick Lee later, later years, right? Um, but this was like the golden era of radio DJs and mix shows.
Right.
And these guys were out in the clubs 4 nights a week at all the different clubs in Northern California. And I was just like, I'm just gonna stick to talking. That's probably where where I might be able to actually make a name and not make a fool out of myself, because I don't want somebody to call up and say, God, that guy sucked. Why did KMEL send him here? He was horrible. So I figured I didn't want to deal with it. But one of my pet peeves, uh, when it comes to DJing, and I get it, it's technology, but the sync DJ, the the guy that jumps up and down and pushes buttons, and everything is pre-recorded, and he's really not doing a damn thing, versus the guys that actually do it live. And again, I know it's technology, it's progress. Uh, if you're doing a wedding, you're doing a high school reunion, a party, you can't bring crates of records. It's just not practical. I get that. But what is your feeling or take on the people that say that they're DJs, but they probably can't put two turntables and a mixer together and do.
Right.
And you can be politically correct on this. I'm very opinionated, and but I'll just shut up and I'll let you talk.
Yeah. Different people came into the game at different times and different
Hmm.
eras and different technology available. So every generation is going to have their people saying, "Oh, they should do this," or "That's nothing," or that, you know what I mean? And it gets
Hmm.
passed on. So I remember, we were on vinyl, we were
Hmm.
playing records, and then the CD technology came. So the vinyl DJs were bagging on the CD, learning DJs, because you had to learn that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, which player is going to be the best player, and how can I, mix beats with just a CD when you can't really touch the actual CD,
Hmm.
So then people started crossing over to more CDs, and a lot of people started on CDs. A lot of people
Yeah.
didn't start on records, so
Hmm.
they skipped that.
Hmm.
So then you have the laptops now with the software generation.
Hmm.
So now those DJs are looking at CD DJs like, CDs are old, bro. So then you have the CD DJ saying, these laptops, you can't trust them. They're always crashing, and you have to, there's dead air when you switch over or whatever.
Right. Right.
And then so they go back and forth. So now you got the vinyl DJs, the CD DJs, now the laptop DJs.
Hmm.
So when you DJ with a laptop, you have a choice now to use a controller,
Hmm.
or you can use a control vinyl, which is
Hmm.
not a record that has the songs on it. It's just it's just something that looks cool, and
Hmm.
it a lot of DJs say, "Oh, well, I like the feel of it because it feels like I'm playing a record."
Right.
So they do that,
Hmm.
and some people use it because it looks cool. So
Yeah.
they use the control vinyl on a turntable,
Hmm.
and some people just like controllers because they feel and look like CD players.
Hmm.
A lot of them are built in the structure of a CD player.
Hmm.
So, but you don't even need all that to mix.
Hmm.
You can mix with the mouse, with your fingertips.
Hmm.
You can select the songs. You don't even need a controller. You can just hook in your audio and just mix with your fingers like this.
Yeah.
Select the song, push
Hmm.
play. You know what I mean? Pitch it down, bend it a little bit. You know what I mean? Get them on beat. If you practice that, you don't
Yeah.
even need a controller. I've seen
Hmm.
people mix with a karaoke cassette player, cassette to cassette. One of my friends amazed me with that. He was mixing
That's
songs.
talent. That's
Yeah,
talent.
dude.
You know,
Shout out to DJ
cassette to
O.
cassette. Come on now.
DJ O,
Hmm.
a friend of mine who ended up mixing with me on Hot 104.7 with Renee.
Uh-huh.
Uh, he was just a kid. Met him at the Merced High School. Uh,
Hmm.
the station I was with, we DJ'd a lunch rally, something, and he came up to me and wanted my autograph. I gave him my autograph and stuff, and later on he called the station. Uh, he said, "Can I play a mix for you that I did?" And I'm like, "All right." So got on the phone. Oh, actually, first it was my friend Eric. He played it
Hmm.
for my friend Eric Sean. And then Eric wanted me to hear what this kid did. He goes, he's all, I think he's playing records, bro. He's claiming that he's playing tapes, but I think he's playing records. So I said, let me hear it. So I listened, and he did a transition from one song to the other on beat, faded in and out. And I was like, you're doing that on cassette? He's like, yeah, it's a karaoke cassette. It has a fader to change between the cassettes. And I was like, I'm going over your house right now. Where do you live? I want to see you do that in front of my eyes.
Yeah. I've honestly, I've never seen that before. I mean, yeah.
And so I went to his house, and he
Uh-huh.
got the cassettes and queued them up, and he mixed right there on that. So you can mix on a laptop without a controller, without control vinyl. If you just practice with your fingertips or on the mouse, you can actually select, and you know what I mean. But there's a thing called sync, which when you drag the song to one side of your laptop on the software, it will match the beat for you. So if your tempo on one song on the left side is 107 BPMs, when you drag the song to the other side, it'll go exactly to 107 BPMs. Instead of you putting it there yourself,
Yeah.
or instead of you listening to it to try to match it, it's right there. It's on the screen anyway, so you don't even have to match it with the headphones. You could just slap it on there, and without sync, you could just put it to 107 with the pitch control. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
So the sync, you still have to throw it in yourself. You still have to keep it on beat yourself. You know what I mean?
So there is skill. There is skill involved.
Yeah, you can involve. You know, it doesn't take away. It doesn't fix anything for you. It just helps you get to the BPM faster.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It will allow for more creativity, I think, because instead of like you having to find the beat, the tempo for the next song, it's already on there. You can already start finding your cue points and your sample pads and all this stuff. Because right now it's a lot of sampling going on and looping.
Yeah.
Whereas before we didn't have that technology with stems technology, you can drop the vocals out. You can just use the acapella, and you can do tricks now as if you were in a studio sampling live. So there is that advantage. But I would honestly recommend all DJs to start practicing, you know, with the records and stuff, because not that you're going to go do gigs with the records, but just adapt yourself to something different.
Yeah.
Get your mind, become a little bit, challenge yourself is what I'm basically trying to say.
Yeah. Learn your craft, right? You know, I see a lot of these Instagram, Facebook, TikTok videos of guys scratching, and they've got these, you know, cute little pink and purple records on a turntable with no tone arm, and they're scratching away, and it's like, wow, okay, wonderful. You know, it just, it irks me. And again, I'm sure it takes some talent, and I'm not saying that I could go out there right now and do it myself. I haven't touched a turntable in 20 years, but you know, I go back to, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 1986. When did World Class Wrecking Crew come out with Turn Off the Lights? Was that 86, 87?
87, going into 88.
So no, it had to be at least, it had to be 87. I think that's when it came out on the Vanity label. World Class Wrecking Crew was in Fresno. They did a show for us. So it was Lonzo. It was I don't know if Dr. Dre was there. I know there was an LA Dre and DJ Battlecat. And I don't know if you're familiar with DJ Battlecat. And he was there with Dr. Rice from UTFO was there as well.
Oh,
and you know, I was literally, I'm 10 feet away from DJ Battlecat, and all he's got is just two really basic. I mean, they were, you know, they were Techniques 1200s, but he's got a basic, you know, Radio Shack mixer that, you know, the club had, and he's literally having a conversation between two records. going back and forth.
Right.
And to this day, I mean, you know, what, 35 plus almost 40 years later, I am still in utter awe of what I witnessed that night. There was no software, there was no nothing. I mean, you know, this was pre-laptop, this was pre-internet,
Right.
this was pre, you know, all of that stuff. And the fact that he was able to do what he did live in person with me watching him do this, you know, my own eyes, my own ears, I was just,
Right.
I was mesmerized. And then, you know, years later, and I remember this almost like it was yesterday, you know, the late, great Michael Erickson and I were at, I think it was, what was the Galleria, I think it was in South of Market in San Francisco. And Rodney O, Joe Cooley, and General Jeff were doing a set. And Michael and I were up on the fifth, sixth floor, whatever balcony, looking straight down on the great Joe Cooley and doing his thing. And just crazy, crazy. There's actually a video somewhere on YouTube of Joe Cooley and somebody else in a battle. That
Cash Money.
yeah. You know the one, right?
Yeah.
Mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. I know we're getting a bit off topic here, but
Joe Cooley should have actually won that battle. They gave
yeah,
it to the homeboy, but
yeah,
everybody that watches it knows.
yeah.
They know Joe Cooley was robbed of that.
I Joe Cooley, Joe Cooley is on my Mount Rushmore of DJs. We'll get to the Mount Rushmore of DJs here in a little bit, but you know, freestyle kind of petered out. I mean, it got kind of like disco, right? Where everybody and their brother was putting out a freestyle record in 90, 91, 92. And
Right.
then it just kind of died out. You know, the record labels, they consolidated, they sold, they just stopped making records. And then like the latter part of the decade is you got the Angelinas and the Buffys and Raquels, and that was more your era, right?
They both were kind of my era, but
Mhm.
I think mostly because I was still hanging around in that era, whereas
Yeah.
some of my peers who were DJing in the earlier generation, they kind of like stopped.
Hmm.
You know, they moved on, did other things, and I was still
Yeah.
active
Hmm.
on the scene. So I was able to pick up on all the new generation of music. You know, the Jocelyn Enriquez, I think I heard her in 93, 94 ish,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
classified.
Hmm.
And uh, then it just kind of like you started hearing though a lot of cheaper quality freestyle songs. They would just slap Planet Rock, a loop, and play keyboards and sing.
Yeah.
And it seemed
Yeah.
like I mean it sounded cool sometimes.
Hmm.
Sometimes it was bad singing, like
Yeah. Yeah.
off key, and a lot of them started becoming like sad crybaby songs.
Hmm.
But um, it has its own following though. Those lower quality songs
Hmm.
have a deep following. Like a lot of San Jose people, they still like those
Yeah.
cheap quality songs, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody likes what they like. You know, I like a couple of them, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, you had some heavy hitters though on some projects like the Houseaholics and Jazzy Jim
Hmm.
were in Angelina's camp,
Yeah.
you know. And then you had Glenn Gutierrez in
Hmm.
Jocelyn Enriquez
Yeah.
camp. And
Hmm.
so those are like uh, really talented producers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you
Um,
had one of the guys, and I forget his name, who was involved with Stevie B, who produced Buffy. What is it? Agdel?
Dagil,
Dagel. Thank you.
Dagil,
Sorry, sorry for mispronouncing your name. But yeah, I mean, he was involved with the Buffy record or Buffy Records, if I'm not
right,
mistaken, right? And she was
right,
from San Jose, Fremont, something like that. You know, just that Bay Area second gen, you know, freestyle era.
right.
Um,
Dagil met Stevie B the same day that I met Stevie B,
mhm.
basically. in San Jose at the fairgrounds. It was an event
Really?
that the Turntable Wizards were having a big dance.
Okay.
It was like a fundraiser type of dance for someone,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in a building at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And the group I was in Modesto Central Unit, Georgia Maya, the manager,
Mm-hmm.
got a call from Radical Rich, who was in
Mm-hmm.
San Jose, and
Sure.
asked if we can play a guest DJ set at this dance in San Jose
Mm-hmm.
with the Turntable Wizards.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, let's go. They reached out to us based on the fact that in Modesto, we were making a lot of noise
Mm-hmm.
in Modesto.
Yeah.
And so we went, and on the marquee of the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, it said Stevie B and April were performing in another hall at the
Okay.
on the same night.
Right. Right.
So we went into the hall where the Turntable Wizards was
Mm-hmm.
event was at, and it was packed,
Mm-hmm.
packed. We'd never seen anything packed like that, man.
Right. Right.
And we went behind the tape, like basically backstage, and we hung out there and got to witness different DJs play. And then
Mm-hmm.
there was a guy that had keyboards set up there. They were
Yeah.
playing keyboards there, and then another guy had a drum machine, and there was different
Mm-hmm.
turntable sets. And one guy had stacks of records and was
Mm-hmm.
flipping through them like crazy. He was in a tuxedo,
Okay.
right? We had never seen this guy and didn't know who he was. I mean, we hardly got to go DJ and go to events out in San Jose or the Bay
Mm-hmm.
because we're always DJing in Modesto. And this guy was incredible. He was flipping through the acapellas and going through different beats, and all of a sudden, he hits the drum machine and takes the records off, and he's playing the drum machine,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's adding 2 new records, and he's just cutting it up and going crazy. And I was like, "Who's this guy?" You know? And so the crowd is going crazy. Then after his set, TDC from Turntable Wizards comes on,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's mobbing over him, and he starts scratching with his elbow, and the crowd is going
A real record,
bonkers.
by the way, not a fake record. A real
Yeah,
record, right?
real vinyl.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, we're just soaking up all this talent. Like we've never
Yeah.
seen anybody spin like that. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
we had seen Rodney O and Joe Cooley and General Jeff. We've seen,
Yep.
Joe Cooley, but that was more juggling and more back and forth and scratching.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't do a mix. He just did
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. I mean, two different worlds, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we're witnessing these guys playing for this humongous crowd, and they're just going off. And we're
Yeah.
like, we have these same records as them. How come
Mm-hmm.
why don't we mix like aggressive power mix style like them? Because we only play the record all the way to the breakdown. And when the breakdown comes, we mix the next record with the
Yeah.
intro and just played it like, like song to song. These guys
Yeah.
were like using the dub version, the acapella version, the percapellas, all these
Mm-hmm.
versions that we had, but we didn't utilize those. So it opened our minds to like start mixing in a different
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But
But
during
the
that time,
yeah. Oh,
oh,
sorry. No,
so
I was going to say the audience though, like if I did something like that when I was in Fresno, for example, right?
right,
Nobody would get it, right? You had to go from Janet Jackson to Expose, and then you went from Expose into, I don't know, in excess song or something
yeah,
like that, right? But if you tried to get funky and creative, at least before midnight, you lost the crowd because they couldn't wrap their head around what you were doing or what you were trying to do. They would just say, God, this sucks. Why I've never heard that version on the radio. And
right,
and
right. They
and
wanted
so
familiarity, is
yeah,
what they wanted.
exactly, right. They wanted what they knew. And the hard part was doing something outside the box, which I think in a bigger city, in a San Jose where it was more uh, metropolitan, right? I mean, they were exposed to, the KSOLs, the Wild
Right,
94.9s, the KMELs, the KDONs, the Hot 97.7s of the world that, they would hear the DJs just basically going off and like what you're describing. And
Right.
in the smaller markets, not so much.
Right. Because in Modesto, no one was mixing like that
Yeah.
until we saw that, and
Mhm.
we Adrian, the other DJ in the group, Mixing Baby,
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
called me up the next day and said, "Hey, let's practice. We need to get like them." And I'm like, "You're damn right. I was about to call you too, because we had all the records they had. We were in Soul Disco Record Pool. Come on now,
Yeah.
Bobby D had all the hot stuff. So
Right.
we just needed to figure out like our own style, but using their aggressive power mix,
Mhm. Mhm.
format.
Yeah.
Basically, we were trying to copy them. We
Mhm.
just, because we didn't have video of that show of what we saw. We just, we're like, well, I remember they did this with what song was it? But in trying to recreate something that we saw, we just developed our own style. We brought that power mix style to the Valley.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what I
Yeah.
was going to say was during that night in San Jose at that event, we saw a group, an entourage start to come backstage where we were at behind the tape.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one guy was wearing cowboy boots and had kind of like an afro and a big beard
Mhm.
and or sideburns. And we're like, and we didn't know what Stevie B looked like because
Uh-huh.
we
Uh-huh.
knew the song "Party Your Body" was
Yeah.
a hot song, but that's all that we had heard. We didn't hear any other songs besides
Mhm.
that,
Sure. Sure.
and we didn't have any pictures to know what this guy looked like. So
Mhm.
there was rumblings backstage with other people like, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And then people were putting it together that that's April. It was three
Mhm.
girls,
Okay.
and it was and then we said that must be Stevie B right there.
Mhm.
So we went over to that entourage, and people were talking to them, and people were introducing themselves. And I met Stevie B then when he only
Mhm.
had the Party Your Body. And I don't know if in Florida he had other songs released, but just on the West Coast at that time,
Mhm.
we only knew that one song.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Dreaming of Love had not came out
Mhm.
yet over here for us to know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I met Stevie B, not knowing if that was Stevie B, but it was. And
Mhm.
and that's when Dagil and a lot of other people, Eugene McCullough, and all of us, we all met Stevie B in April
Right.
because their
Mhm.
show, they left the hall where they were performing.
Mhm.
They came to this hall where the dance was at. Now what I don't know how that their concert event went. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Maybe they were finished with their performance and they came over. Someone was saying, "Yeah, it was probably nobody there. That's why they came over here. They want to see why everybody's over here." That was kind of in the rumblings back there. But I don't know for sure. That's just something you'd have to take up with Stevie B. But I was
Mhm.
there. That's a big
Nice.
night that changed the direction of freestyle because Stevie B that from that night
Mhm.
linked up with Dagil,
Yeah. Yeah.
Glenn, you
Yep.
know what I mean? And those guys
Mhm.
and created, songs with them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if it
So
wasn't for
so
that night, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That a lot of stuff wouldn't have probably happened the way it happened. And I was there. I was
Nice.
lucky to be there.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, so you mentioned Stevie Big. I mean, first off, I mean, I I don't know if we can call him the king of freestyle. I think he calls himself the king of freestyle. I'm not going to argue with the guy because he was the first male solo freestyle artist to have a Billboard #1, right? Uh, with the Postman song, right? I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. Timmy T followed him, a couple weeks later. But to your question earlier, did he have anything before Party Your Body? The answer is yes, actually. So he was on before LMR Records, he was on a vanity label in Miami that escapes me right now.
Was it Midtown?
It might have been Midtown. Well, he did stuff on Midtown before and during, I think, LMR, right?
Because there
With
was the Nightmare song that he did, and then he did some other stuff with um,
but but this was before he was called Stevie B. He was
right.
he was called Steve, just
Okay.
Steve. And that record, if you can find it, is like $1,000. It's like one of the crown jewels of freestyle music. It is so hard
Wow.
to find that if you've got one, in your garage, in your stacks or something like that, and you need rent money, put it on eBay and you'll get $1,000 for it. I mean, it's that hard to find. Um, but yeah, I mean, Stevie B, clearly on the Mount Rushmore of freestyle artists.
Right.
Uh, he did when I was at KMEL. I mean, we booked him to, a bunch of shows because I mean, he was a headliner. I mean, he
Right.
was the man. And even today he's still out. I just came across a video of him earlier on Instagram where he was in Miami at a radio station doing something live, and he looks great. I think he's 65, 66 years old now.
I don't
Look,
know, but
looks
I would
spectacular.
personally, I would probably call him the king of freestyle.
Yeah,
That's just me. And I
yeah,
know that's not a knock to any other
yeah.
male solo artist because they all did their thing.
Hmm.
But just in my opinion of just being the DJ in my area that I am,
Yeah,
well, I would probably I don't mind giving him the title, you know what I'm saying?
yeah. So okay, so let's say you're at a club, and you're spinning records, and you're you've got 2 hours, and all you play is Debbie Deb, Expose, Cover Girls, Stevie B, Trenier, Taylor Dane, Lisa, and throw in a Noel and I don't know, a few other people, right? Anybody leaving the dance floor, or you got them hooked?
Um, I mean, if I'm doing a night like specifically catered to that format, yeah, I mean, there's enough music to keep them on for 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna lose a couple of people because they're just tired. You know what I mean? And they're thirsty, they want to drink. So they're
Yeah.
gonna lose a couple of people, but you'll gain some people. A couple of songs you might lose some, but
Hmm.
you're gonna gain some back just on the same song.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a place in Modesto called Crocodiles, which is now bringing freestyle artists. They call it Freestyle Friday
Hmm.
throughout the year, and I'm actually going to do a guest DJ set. Sapphire is coming
Nice.
to town,
Nice.
um,
Nice.
but Cynthia was here.
Okay.
Raquel was here.
Yep.
No Sarah, Angel from the
Hmm.
Cover Girls,
Hmm.
um, Bob and Will to Power uh,
Hmm.
was here.
By the
And
way, great DJ in Miami.
okay,
So that's how Will to Power got started. Was Bob was a DJ, was a radio station DJ, not too different from like Cameron Paul, and that's how Will to Power got started.
Jade, Pretty Poison,
Hmm. Yep.
was here.
Okay.
So they're bringing
That's
their
awesome.
special freestyle night here. Um,
Yeah.
each DJ is going to play a little bit differently.
Hmm.
Um, we're going to play some throwbacks, but if we had to, we could play a solid 2 hours of just the freestyle genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in,
But
in honor in honor of Modesto and in honor of you, I wore this jacket. But by the way, I'm wearing a Techniques shirt. But I wore this jacket for this
oh man,
occasion. I don't know if you can see that.
yes.
So what does this mean to you? 297.
Um, okay, so Modesto, um, being that the radio stations, tried to do their thing here and there. Out of nowhere came a station called Q97. I'd say like 87, late 87, going into 88. Um, there was the station had no commercials.
Mm-hmm.
They were playing some Miami bass and some freestyle and some Paula Abdul and some Janet. And
Mm-hmm.
we're like, what's this station? It's just music. And then
Mm-hmm.
it gained a lot of listeners here. Like we're just we never had an FM station that played the party songs
Yeah.
that we liked.
Hmm.
You know, a generation before, we had to listen to an AM station from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock playing the dance music rap
Yeah.
on a Sunday.
Hmm.
And then when that was over at 9, we flipped to the other station playing it
Hmm.
from 9 to 12.
Okay.
And that was it. And then the rest of the day, the rest of the week, you heard it was just pop music, you
Yeah.
know, contemporary, you know, Hall and Oates, stuff like
Top
that.
40. Top
Yeah,
40
top
stuff.
40,
Yeah.
top 40. Um, but so to hear a station like Q97 just like play these jams that we were like, whoa, they're playing this one, you know, they're playing this one, you know. So we knew but we knew there was some cool people behind it or something, you know what I mean? Because they, I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
So later on, they started incorporating. We started hearing commercials, and we started hearing maybe a mix. We'd
Hmm.
catch a mix, and I don't remember who was mixing, but we caught parts of mixes, and then there was on-air talent started getting on the radio, and one of the on-air talents was some guy named Handsome Rich Ransom, and he would get on the radio, and we were like, sounds like a cool guy. He's all this cool music is being played, you
Hmm.
know. So that station left such an impression on a lot of DJs because
Hmm.
it helped us actually because some of the songs that we had at Bobby G's Soul Disco
Yeah.
record pool, um, they would become hits because people had tapes, you know, they had DJ tapes
Yeah.
or the events that we did. But having that station play those hit songs that
Hmm.
other stations weren't playing helped us out in the parties because, you know, people coming up would be like telling us a song that they heard on Q97,
Yeah.
and we'd be like, yeah, we have it, you know.
Hmm.
But if there was no Q97, you know, I mean, people still would have heard those songs, but not the way, not the big masses anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know what I'm saying? Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, I mean, we broke a lot. We broke a lot there. I mean, I was the music director there, and we broke a lot of the songs that you're talking about. And
so did you ever meet Handsome Rich Ransom?
God, once I think, really good guy, incredibly
Ladies and
good
gentlemen,
looking,
this is
incredible,
Handsome Rich Ransom behind the mic right here.
incredibly good looking guy. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was, we were influenced, obviously by Camiel. I had just come from B95 in Fresno, which, really shook up the Fresno market. I worked for Barry Richards in Fresno, and Barry just had an absolute take no prisoners attitude on everything, right? I don't care what you think. I'm going to play this record. I think it's a great record. And, I kind of tried to bring a little bit of that cowboy mentality when I left Fresno to come up to Modesto. But, we were heavily influenced by, Croy and Sacramento. We were influenced by Hot 97.7, San Jose, obviously by KMEL. And then just by, an ear, right? I mean, Will the Power you mentioned earlier. I mean, they were on a major label, but we would get the smaller label calling, and Micmac Records, huge.
Right.
We broke Fantasy Girl. There were other, we played Noel. We played, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Tolga.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we played Tolga, for goodness sakes, right? I mean, it was a great record. And there was just a lot of stuff that you wouldn't hear on the quote unquote mainstream top 40 radio station
Right.
that we would play. And it would piss off a lot of the record, promotion guys. Well, why aren't you playing, Aerosmith, or why aren't you playing Peter Cetera, or whatever it might be? And it was like, doesn't fit, right? It doesn't fit what we're trying to do here. It's a great record. It's a great record, and it's doing well in Des Moines, Iowa, I'm sure. But I'm catering to the Modesto Stockton market, and they want to hear Trenier. It's just it's just the market, and
Right.
that's something that Keith Naftali did in San Francisco with KMEL. Was I mean, he never played a lot of songs that hit number one on Billboard. He wouldn't play. I think George Harrison had a number one song in like 1987. Got My Mind Set on You.
Right.
Didn't play it. He wouldn't play Robbie Neville. He wouldn't play Tiffany. He wouldn't play Debbie Gibson. I think maybe they would work it in the mixes, and maybe he would work in
Right.
one of the
Debbie
ballads.
Gibson had a cool little club versions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, they would work in that kind of stuff, but the off the shelf 45 wouldn't wouldn't play it. So it was just a different mindset that he had, that it made record executives happy, and at the same time it pissed them off because they needed that San Francisco exposure for your Robbie Neville "What's It to You" song that never got played at KMEL, or never even got played. I don't even think it ever got played in the San Francisco market. So just a different mindset, but without that mindset of guys like Keith Naftali, or the program directors in Miami or New York, or Ken Richards and Christopher Lance at Hot 97 in San Jose, that the freestyle songs that became classics likely wouldn't be classics today. You mentioned Cynthia, you mentioned Sapphire. I mean, Sapphire wound up on a major label, but
Right.
without the Hot 97s of the world in both New York and San Jose, without um, the beat in LA, without KMEL, without Q97, uh, you know, would she have gotten picked up by a mate? Who knows? Would it have been, would she have had hits? Who knows? Um, so yeah, it's good to have that cowboy mentality, that think outside the box, uh, that unfortunately doesn't really exist anymore. At least, in my eyes, it doesn't exist the same way, which is why I think people are shying away from radio and going to Spotify and wherever else where they can actually find their own music and see where their lane is. But um, wanted to talk a little bit about, while we're wrapping it up here. I mentioned a little earlier about let's talk Mount Rushmore a little bit. If we can go Mount Rushmore freestyle artist, male or female, group or
Ooh,
solo, group or solo, just the top five for you, freestyle
man.
artists.
Okay, so I've been asked that before, like, what are my top? Um, People ask me top five, but Mount Rushmore, there's only four.
Yep.
But um, so I'm complicated on my answer because I answer it one way and then I answer it another way. The reason why
Okay.
is because I have my personal
Mm-hmm.
top five Mount Rushmore
Yep.
type, and then of what I personally like. Then I have what they did for the genre and their
Yeah.
impact towards the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, I like some obscure song, and
Mm-hmm.
by a certain artist that had like maybe one hit, and it's dope to me, but
Right.
it didn't make it. And so then you
Mm-hmm.
have another artist who I might like some of their songs, but they were so big that they deserve to be top five artists. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So there's
Yep.
that. So one time I made a personal top five of what I feel, and then
Mm-hmm.
what they did for the scene or for the genre.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So my question is, what do you want to? Could I do both? No, I don't know.
Fire away. Fire away. Go ahead. We got time.
So just artist, group, or solo? You're saying
Group or solo, male or female.
male or
Mount
female?
Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Mount
So there's
Rushmore.
okay. So there's
Four.
four.
Yeah. Even
Got
harder.
it. Um, I gotta put Stevie B.
Yep.
I'd have to put, and I'd have to put Lisa.
Interesting. Okay.
Um,
There's a lot of people don't consider Lisa freestyle. I mean, they do latter day, but back in the day,
right.
you know,
That's what I'm just going by, like
yeah.
right
Okay.
now.
Sure.
Throwing everybody in the bucket there.
Okay.
So I'd probably say her. Um, um, I want to say Will to Power,
Okay.
and I'm gonna have to say Expose.
Okay.
The reason why, I mean, those are my, for the industry, for the genre,
Yeah.
top.
Yeah. Okay.
Because a lot of other artists did have impact too, and those are just the ones that I'm coming off. Like they left an imprint, you know what I mean? Kind of
Right.
like a formula.
Mm-hmm.
They charted,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Crossed over.
Right.
They didn't stay one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had different people. You had not only the Hispanics, the blacks, and the whites were all rocking to
Mm-hmm.
the songs that these my little Mount Rushmore put out.
Right.
Because later on, you know, it got divided
Mm-hmm.
in like ethnicities and stuff. But like, you know, I come from the era when, you know, like the blacks and the whites, they were bumping their freestyle.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, you don't see that as much. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
mostly the Latinos that bump in the freestyle. But back
Mm-hmm.
then, a lot of the songs had bass. A lot of
Yeah.
the songs, you know, had good, you know, good everything.
Sure.
So it was like universal. Like
Yeah.
everybody was rocking to these songs.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas later on, it got divided into, oh, that's only what the Latinos listen to. You know what I mean? Or that's only, you know. But early on, it was everybody rocking to. Like
Right.
you could see
Right.
on Dance Party USA, you know what I mean? It's like a mix of people, you know, and that is on the East Coast. That's in Philadelphia, that
Right.
show.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, okay, so that's kind of like why I put those artists, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Because they charted well and they were um, very accepted, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
stick to one thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had the slow songs,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like the crossed over, you know, you had All Cried Out crossed over, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Right. But
Postman,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
but then again, I mean, you know, Lisa was on Columbia Records, so they had a machine behind them, right?
Yeah.
Um, so okay, fair enough, fair enough. So I'll just toss mine in here. Mine isn't going to be too different than yours, right? If I'm going my Mount Rushmore, I'm going Stevie B. I'm going Expose, just because they had that monumental album where I believe they were the first group, male or female, to have 5 top 10s off their debut album. That's top Billboard. I mean, just
Yeah.
huge. And so I mean, they really helped create the mainstream for that. Then I've got to go with Cover Girls because Cover Girls, you know, on Fever Records, not only crossed over, they had
Yep.
big pop hits.
Right.
So I'm going with the Cover Girls, and then I've got to go, and this is where I'm torn. It's 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 Debbie Deb or it's
Right.
Premiere,
Yeah.
and
It's the same camp, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Pretty Tony, you know what I mean? Pretty Tony did his
I
thing.
you know, and I'm really torn. So I'm gonna go Debneer, and
Okay. Living here.
so yeah, so I'm uh, you know, if we could put the two together, that would be it. So my last question for you, my final question here is another Mount Rushmore. Is your Mount Rushmore of DJs?
Okay. It's easier for me
Okay.
to do this one because I didn't want to give out my personal freestyle Mount Rushmore because I just want to do the one I think mattered to the genre. So
Sure.
so all you listeners don't get mad at me for excluding some people, because they're on my personal Mount Rushmore.
Well, if you want to just bust it out right now, just do it really quick. Who is it? One, two, three, four. Personal Mount Rushmore.
My personal Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
I'd say Stevie B,
Yep.
Sapphire,
Okay.
Angelina.
Right.
Got to get somebody from the '90s era.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably would say, see, this is where I'm torn too. I'm gonna go Trinier.
Okay. Can't go wrong
Yeah.
with any of those. Can't go wrong with any of those. Okay, so DJs, knock it out. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Grandmaster Flash.
Okay.
For what I heard on that mix, that medley
Yep.
that he did. I'd say Michael Erickson,
Okay.
what I heard on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably have to say Cameron Paul for sure,
Mm-hmm.
because what he did for DJs, you know what I mean? His style was different than Michael, but and I gravitated more towards Michael's style, but Cameron was on fire. Like he was
He influenced an entire generation of DJs.
an influence, yeah.
Yeah.
So man, I'm gonna have to give it up to the guy that I saw in a tuxedo flipping the acapellas and the dubs
Mm-hmm.
and the drum machine,
Yeah.
and who blew my mind watching him, because if it wasn't for being at that dance and seeing that guy,
Right.
and the other DJs too, but that guy
Uh-huh.
was here. I was like, no, that guy.
Yeah.
Later on, I found out that was Jazzy Jim.
Nice. Jazzy Jim Archer?
So
Yeah, legend.
he influenced my live play from that dance
Yeah.
party that Stevie B came over to later.
Yeah. Wow.
Michael Erickson influenced my radio play,
Okay.
making the mix. And Grandmaster Flash was just an overall, oh wow, you can do that with records.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And Cameron was like the inspiration that motivated all of us to like, oh, look how many times he's on the radio. He's on again. He's on at 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock every night doing a mix. You know what I mean? Like he's putting out his own mix records now, steady. And people were doing that before, but like not the way he was marketing and all that stuff. I mean, so that would be my DJ Mount Rushmore.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
And for those who don't know, the Blondie song Rapture was written about Grandmaster Flash and Fab Five Freddy. So I'm just throwing that out there for everybody who listens to Rapture and thinks that Blondie is ripping off the genre. She actually wrote the song after seeing Grandmaster Flash live at a club in New York City. So I just had to throw that out there. So I'm going to throw, in case anybody cares about me, I'm just going to toss my top 4, my Mount Rushmore out there right now. And I'm going to stick with people that I've worked with and I've seen up close and personal. And it's going to be a little bit different than yours. But number 1 has to be Cameron Paul. Again, just influenced an entire generation of DJs, not only in Northern California, but worldwide. And still, to this day, his stuff is on YouTube. It's all over the place. And so he's got to be right there. Michael Erickson, again, for what you said, right? Just the style and the influence that he had on the craft, because he was a technician. He was proud of the craft of DJing. The next one, I'm going to go with Theo Mizuhara. And a lot of people know Theo from, The Voice, or, when he was on the radio in LA, or he was, what was the movie? That Stella got her groove back. I think he did the voice
he's on the radio,
in that movie, right? So a lot of people know Theo for that, but Theo was just flat badass.
Yeah.
When it came to remixes.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I trust me, I know.
Yeah. And so, I don't know where Theo is these days. I've tried to look him up. If you're out there, Theo, hit me up. I'd love to catch up. And then last but not least, I'm going with the wild card here. I'm going with Qbert. And because he was like that next generation that was influenced by the Michael Ericksons, the Camerons, the Theos, the Billies, that just took it to the next level, in the 90s on. So
for battle DJs, he was
I mean, he won many, many, many times. I forgot what's the it's sponsored by Techniques, if I'm not mistaken, but it's the
DMC.
World. Yeah. I mean, he won that 4 or 5 times,
multiple times. With his friends, and then solo too. But
so
he was actually in Soul Disco Record Pool, Bobby G, as well.
Okay.
So we got to see him at our monthly meetings. We had mandatory meetings. So I'd bump into Qbert over here on this side of the room, and then Jose Melendez on this side of the room, and Chuy Gomez on this side of the room.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Mind Motion, EFX, and Eazy-E, the two brothers, were answering the phones and telling Bobby G, "Hey, it's Cameron on the phone." You know what I mean? So I was in that environment, you know what I mean, at Bobby G's. Rest in peace, Bobby G.
Yeah.
But so I was around these guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I remember I had again, we're getting off topic and we're getting long-winded here, but I mean, one of the first mixes that I heard that wasn't Cameron was EFX.
Oh, okay.
And it
Raul.
was exactly right. And I think I was in Fresno, and I heard it, and I don't remember where I got it from. I think it was actually pressed on vinyl, and it was like, damn, you can do this. You can, because I had mixed it on vinyl in the 86, 87, whenever it was.
Right.
And then I got Raul's record, and it was like, some bad stuff, man. I'm liking this. But anyways, I wrap this up. I know we're getting kind of long-winded, and probably people don't want to hear all of our personal stories here. But thanks again for taking the time to spend with me today. It's always good catching up. It's always good seeing your face on screen or in person. And I'm looking forward to going out and getting burritos again. Yeah,
man. Let me know whenever you're coming this way.
I will.
And
I will.
And then let's set up another party with your company, and so I could DJ again.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Freestyle. I can't even say it. Freestyle Flashback. Catch the blog at freestyleflashback.com. I'm Handsome Rich Ransom. I will be back again really soon with another really cool artist. We've got some really great artists coming up. We've got a couple more DJs coming up. Some surprises, some big names, some names that maybe you haven't heard in a long time. But it's all going to be right here on Freestyle Flashback. So thank you so much, DJ 99, for joining me, and we will see you soon. Take care.
You're listening to Freestyle Flashback with Handsome Rich Ransom. Freestyle Flashback. Freestyle Flashback.